Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone watching from around the world. And welcome back to Congress for Global Communication, whereas CGC exists to promote diverse and inclusive dialogue resulting in civility for all. Now, our roundtable discussion today will focus on good health and well being. And as we broach this topic today, I want you to think about three things. What can I do to help? The world reached its goal to help this world reach its goal by 2030. One way you can start is by promoting and protecting your own health and the health of those around you. Also, raise awareness in your community about the importance of good health and your healthy lifestyle, the way you eat. Now, my co-host for today is Brian Fry. Brian is the Director of Strategy at Trinity Health Hospital. He's a Director of Operations and Business Development at MedStar Medical Group. And he's manager over health disparities at the Detroit Health Department. But before I bring Brian out, I need you to do three things for me. One, please put in the feed where you're watching from. This will allow us to know who is in attendance today. Two, if you have any questions or comments, please put those in the feed as well. This will let the team know if they're on track or if they're missing any details that they need to capture for their initiative. And then finally, share the video. This will allow those missing in action to catch it on replay. So finally, I want to say thank you and welcome for joining us today. And I'm going to go right ahead and bring out Brian Fry and let him talk a few minutes about himself. So Brian, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, my name is Brian Fry. I'm the Director of Strategy for Community Hospital in Southeast Michigan as a part of Trinity Health Network. I'm a graduate of the University of Michigan, where I received my bachelor's in psychology, as well as 2 master's degrees in health administration and business administration. I've had the pleasure of working across the health system, the United States health system, starting in a community health department in Detroit, working in the corporate office and the medical group in the Mid-Atlantic region, as you mentioned, with MedStar Health. And now on the front lines within a community hospital in Pontiac, Michigan. Excited to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. And our special guest for this evening is Dr. Tara Wallace. And I'm going to ask her to take a couple minutes to talk about herself, a little bit about herself.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day. My name is Tara Wallace, and I am a clinical social worker. I am in Topeka, Kansas. I was born and raised here. I am a graduate of Washburn University, where I received my master's in social work, and I am currently pursuing a doctorate degree from Liberty University in community care and counseling with an emphasis in traumatology. I am also a spiritual life coach. And then I am also a jack of all trades. Let's just put it that way. I do a lot of things. How about that?
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know when we were having a discussion, you were talking about you were from Topeka, and then Brian knew someone in Topeka, and we were saying, "Oh, this is a small world," because that was the first time you guys had met. So yeah, that was strange as well. But again, I thank you and welcome both of you to the platform today.
Thank you.
I'm just, since both of you are out here in this medical field and dealing with paid people, and we got all these suicides, and we have everything going on right now. I'm just going to ask the question: why is good health and well-being so important in this day and age? Either one of you can start.
Okay. I'm going to let Brian go first because there's so many ways to approach that, and we can both talk for forever and never even touch on the same areas.
Sure. So please interject at any point because like you said, Dr. Wallace, there is quite a bit to say about good health and well-being. When people think about good health, most commonly they think about how you physically present. And that's significant. However, there's a lot more to it. Your physical health does require constant maintenance and upkeep in order to put yourself and your community in a position to succeed. Having poor health will present challenges to your ability to live a normal lifestyle and your ability to accomplish simple activities of daily living. According to the National Institute of Health, activities of daily living, or ADLs, is a term used to collectively describe fundamental skills required to independently care for oneself. The basic ADLs include the following categories: ambulating, the extent of an individual's ability to move from one position to another or walk independently; feeding, the ability of a person to feed oneself; dressing, the ability to select appropriate clothes and put their clothes on; personal hygiene, the ability to bathe and groom oneself and maintain dental hygiene, nail and hair care; continence, the ability to control bladder and bowel function; toileting, the ability to get rid of, this is the last one, toileting, the ability to get to and from the toilet, using it appropriately, and cleaning oneself. Personally, and I think a lot of people would say some of these things you can kind of take for granted. And that's fair, because there is a limited population that has deficiencies across these various categories. But for me, it was really driven home when I finished college and started my first career opportunity with the Detroit Health Department, in which I was working in pediatric dentistry. And this is where I learned how impactful a healthcare deficiency can have an impact across one's life. If you think about it, the digestive tract is going to, feed into everything that you do. What you put into your body is what you get out of it. But what if you can't eat? If you don't have teeth, if you've got poor oral hygiene, and it's painful to eat, then you're going to have a very significant challenge in your ability to feed yourself with nutritious items. Or conversely, if you live in an impoverished area, what people colloquially will call a food desert, where there aren't grocery stores or healthy options for you to purchase and eat, you're going to eat junk food and fried food. And therefore, again, what you put in is what you're going to get out. So it's important to understand how physical health really has an impact on your ADLs, like I said before, and being able to maintain and provide upkeep for that, so that way you're able to put yourself into a position to succeed. Now, on the other side of the coin, there's well-being. And a lot of times people think of this hat in hand with wellness. And we'll break those two ideas apart a little bit. Well-being encompasses the broader holistic dimensions of a well-lived life. Gallup defines this across 5 elements: your career well-being. Do you like what you do every day? Social well-being. Do you have meaningful friendships in your life? Financial well-being. Do you manage your money well? Physical well-being. Do you have the energy to get things done? Community well-being. Do you like where you live? On the other side of that coin is wellness. Wellness describes a healthy lifestyle beyond acute illness, referring to a state of physical health in which people have the ability and energy to do what they want to do in life without chronic suffering. Wellness has several components that work together and overlap, much like a Venn diagram. Those components are physical wellness, spiritual wellness, social, occupational, intellectual, environmental, cultural, and emotional. Now, depending on which resource you look at, there might be additional components. They might trim that down to a smaller subset. At the end of the day, what's important to understand is that achieving optimal wellness will promote higher self-esteem, confidence, creativity, problem solving, and general productivity. If you think about it like a table, if one of those legs, whether there's 5, 6, or 7, is shorter or longer, in other words, underperforming or overperforming compared to its peers, then the table's going to wobble. And just putting a folded up napkin underneath that leg is only putting a Band-Aid on the problem, rather than uncovering the root cause for the issue and addressing that to improve your overall health, well-being, or wellness. So it's important to make sure that you got awareness across those various ideas and elements. Otherwise, you can put yourself in a position to not be successful or sacrifice one of the elements to overcompensate for another. And that just doesn't put you in the right state of mind in order to, like I said, achieve optimal wellness.
Hmm. Okay. Tara, before you go ahead, I'm going to introduce Felicia. She's joined us, and I'm going to ask her to take a few minutes and introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Felicia Glass, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have a private practice here in Topeka, Kansas. One of my many specialties, of which I think is the avenue I walk down the best, is dealing with grief. So I'm also a fellow of the American Academy of Grief, and that is the lane in which I try to travel when I'm helping and working with people. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Tara, go ahead. What's the importance of good health and well-being?
So I like the way that Brian laid all of that out,
Yes.
because when you put it in the context of the pandemic, think about how we all felt that we were living optimal health and wellness. Everyone thought that they were in top notch health and wellness. And then the pandemic hit, and we were all like that table. And we thought that that napkin, that folded up napkin, was going to do us just fine. And it wasn't. We all had deficits in areas that we thought were okay. We could get by with just the bare minimum would do us okay. And the pandemic basically showed us where we couldn't get by with just the bare minimum. We all figured out that we had to make some changes, but we also figured out that there were a lot of individuals, countries, continents even, that needed a lot more than just the bare minimum and the basics. There were significant deficits worldwide, and COVID exposed all of that. There were countries, there were continents, there were individuals, there were families that did not have access to a lot of things that prevented or protected them from something as simple as physical contact. And so that exposed them physically, mentally, and emotionally to COVID. So having optimal physical, mental, and emotional wellness is an absolute necessity. And that's why this is important, because we have to get to a place where optimal mental and emotional wellness is a basic necessity.
Yes.
It has to be a basic necessity. It has to be the bare minimum has to be a basic for everyone. And that's what's important right now. And that's why we are here today, is to reach a point where the bare minimum is equitable across the board.
Mm.
And that gave me goosebumps to think about reaching the bare minimum across the board. How do we reach that?
Yes.
That is pretty powerful to think about. How do we reach bare minimum across the board? That's pretty heavy. Bare minimum across the board worldwide. How do you reach that? That's pretty heavy.
And did you come up with anything?
Oh, we've got a lot of ideas. We've got a lot of ideas.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay, okay.
We've got a lot of ideas.
uh, Felicia, do you have anything to add to that?
I really just ditto what I've heard. I think that optimal health gives us the ability to broaden our range of resiliency. If the more healthy I am, the greater my ability to sustain life's experiences. And oftentimes we fail, as Tara said, we fail to help people have the bare minimal of health. And so therefore we can't be surprised when they're unable to bounce back without a lot of extra support and a lot of extra input. I love how Brian broke down all the different areas. I check in with people, and people think it's odd, but I often talk about, have you checked your pie lately? What's your pie level, and your physical, intellectual, environmental, and spiritual or spatial well-being. For those that aren't spiritual, what's your pie looking like? Are you, is it a whole pie? Do you need to fill one slice of the pie? Like, does someone steal a piece? Really, it's about helping us to have a daily reflection about what can I be doing every single day to improve my level of health, not in just one area, but in every area of my life. At the end of the day, how did I impact each of those? And so for me, it's about helping people be resilient, and we cannot be resilient if we're not able to meet every single basic need that we have. We fail.
The idea of resiliency, Felicia, is a great point, because there's never a moment in time where you're not going to experience challenges across daily living. And when you have deficiencies across that pie, like you said, your ability to be resilient is going to be compromised. And the more and more that you are compromised and challenged in various areas, the more challenged your health and overall well-being and wellness will be. So it's important to understand how that impacts your resiliency. And then, like you said, and like you do, have people that check up on you and have the ability to check up on others. Because I'd be lying if I told you that I could do this on my own, or you could do this on your own. Everybody needs a village. And so it's important to understand that, seek help when you need it, seek to help when you see that others need it.
And that's awesome. Good. That right there.
I say that right there.
We see so much of that, in the world today. I could be sitting. I was going to say I could be sitting at work, but I retired, so I can't say that. But I used to. I used to sit at work, and you can just watch people come in, and you can just look to see if they're doing something out of the norm that you've not seen them do before. And sometimes, you may reach out and ask them if they're okay. And, sometimes, they'll say yes, or they won't say anything. But most of the time, what I feel that people tend to want to hold stuff in because they don't want you to think that something's wrong with them. And I know that there was a point in time somebody said something to me, and my thing is, I don't want everybody in my business. But I know I need help, What do I do?
Well, because we've been taught that strongman mentality, right? Like we are responsible for everyone. And how am I going to take care of them if they got to take care of me? It's just a vicious cycle. And Brian, you hit the nail on the head. Like, not only do I need to check in on them, but they need to check in on me. But the other part of it, which I feel like is like the missing key for us, is we also have to be willing to go with each other. Like, I don't have to say, hey, sis, here's a therapist. I'm like, hey, sis, here's a therapist. Did you make that appointment today? When is it? Let me schedule to go with you. Oh, wait, bro, you need to go and get a mammogram. Girl, I'll go with you, because I know what it's like to sit in that lobby and wait and worry. Like, let's do this together. That partnership, that village, we need to recreate what village really looks like and how we play our role in the village.
That's good. That's good. That's good. How can we bring attention to mental health awareness, education, and resource globally? So we have so many issues with mental health. We have, you say something to one person, he's subject to go off. He's subject to go home, get a gun, come back, shoot up the whole place. Then we have the people that you never knew anything was wrong with them, and the next thing you know, you hit that they've committed suicide. We've just got things all over the place. Talk to me, somebody, say something.
So Felicia and I make a habit of normalizing mental health wherever we go. We don't sugarcoat it. We don't pretty it up. We make it as real as possible, simply because a lot of communities, people don't talk about it at all. And we make our presence known and we normalize it as often as possible. We make it very real. We don't hide it at all. When people see us, no matter where we go, they know. They automatically know. We don't shy away from it. We are advocates for mental health. We are advocates for talking about feelings. We are advocates for people getting help. When we struggle, we talk about struggling and getting help for our struggling. Simply because, especially as Black women, that's not something that is promoted in minority communities. And I think that it's helped, especially among our friend groups, because until I don't know how long, it's just never, we wear the cape. We hear the songs on the radio. We see all these celebrities talking about being strong women and being powerful and all of these things. Our mothers did it. Our grandmothers did it. And all of those things. And it shows up in their bodies. So we talk about the physical health, we talk about the mental health, we talk about the emotional health, and we talk about all of those things and why those things are important. And that's why, again, I like how Brian gave us all of that, because all of that, it's holistic. When you feel bad mentally and emotionally, and you keep that in your body, it shows up in your body. Even if you keep a strong face, your body's going to tell on you. When you don't deal with what's going on here, it shows up here first. Allostatic load is what it's called. That's what the stress in your mind that shows up in your body, that's what happens over time. It's like, when I describe it to my clients, it's like rust. It's what happens when a car, if you were to sit a car in the elements, if you were to take a priceless car and set it in the elements and do nothing to it for years, just sit it there. Don't wash it. Don't cover it. Just sit it in the middle of nothing and let the rain, the sun, the wind, the snow, all of that just hit it for years, and it starts to rust. That's allostatic load, and that's what happens to our bodies.
Oh.
And that's what we have to start doing. We have to start normalizing it.
Dr. Wallace, even if you put a car in a parking garage and let it sit,
it'll happen.
It'll happen there anyway. Even when you've got protection from the elements, without that maintenance and upkeep, deterioration will present itself.
There you go. There you go. Dr. Brian just told you. It'll happen.
Oh my goodness.
And the idea is that, Tara talked about not being able to, like not talking about it, how we keep it all to ourselves. We don't share. We often are, kind of like this person that's in a box. We're just kind of robotic with feelings and emotions because we've been taught to be silent about those. Boys don't cry. If you're a girl and you cry too much, you're a crybaby. Think about all the names people called you or said, just you guys can hear them going through your head as I talk about it, right? All the little mean things people say about you when you're emotional. I remember my mom used to always say, you cry so much, if anybody stole you, they bring you back because you would annoy them. She was like, I can't even say anything to you without you crying. You're just emotional, and so here I am as an adult helping people work through feelings and emotions. And in all honesty, I think the global solution is teaching us that communication is so much more than surface level. It is so much more than hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. And we keep on going. Communication and health is really about taking a moment to hear someone, to see someone, to recognize their pain, to be able to say, you know what? It's okay that you feel that way, right? It's so much more to life than I'm good, I'm fine, or I'm okay. Like, no, really, what's behind those emotions? Like, let's dig a little deeper. And if you're not okay sharing that deeper with your closest, most intimate friends, and I could have a whole conversation about how petty our friendships are and how unreal most people are with their friends. Like, seriously, like, you need to be able to have like a for real dialogue with your family. Like, I should be able to tell you the color of my underwear and you be okay. Not just be talking about, oh yeah, girl, I got up and got dressed today. Like, no, what's the real? Like, give me the meat of the situation. And I think that until we're able to talk to people in everyday table dialogue about mental health, we will always be where we are. We have to be able to talk about mental health, not just in the car ride on the way from school. Like, how was your day? No, tell me, how did that kid make you feel? Did you feel invigorated by your teacher today? Did you feel empowered? If they put you down, in what way? Like, we need to dig, like, you know, like that dog that sniffs that bone. And like, we need to be that way when it comes to our feelings, our emotions. We can't be afraid to share our stories. Think about the number of women that get a mammogram in a year that test positive. And they never talk about those feelings and emotions that happened in the doctor's office the moment they heard it was positive. They stuff that and they start running forward towards healing. Or the men who go and they find out they have prostate cancer. You know, they never talk about the fear, their power being taken, having the exam itself. We overlook all of that, right? Because we're always on the go to what's next. Our people, we have to come to a place where we stop, we pause, and we deal with every piece of the puzzle.
Going to the doctor, period.
Girl.
Can we just start there?
Girl.
Preventative care, yeah.
Preventative care.
Because how difficult is it to get somebody to the point where they do that?
It's very difficult. And that's why
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask this question since you brought it up. That's where I was going, is that I find that female have a tendency to go to the doctor much more so than men.
Yes.
So what is it that what is required to convince a man he needs to go to the doctor for a checkup?
I'm a bad person to ask because I go to the doctor regularly, but yeah, I do. But I can't say that is the case for all of my friends or my family members, despite how much I advocate for it. I think there is something to be said about the fear of other and the fear of the unknown, because depending on your demographic, you might be more susceptible to, one thing or another, whether it's based on your age, or race or your family background. And so not knowing what's behind that door when you go to the doctor. And I'll say this too, the advent of information has only made that worse in certain cases, because it's good to have WebMD, but not every little ache and pain is cancer.
Right.
But at the same time, you should be cognizant of when something is imbalanced or something is abnormal. And so fear from trying to figure out what that might be is what I think gets in the way of a lot of people going to the doctor on a regular basis. And that's not to ignore the access issues, because there are absolutely access issues across the entire spectrum of health. I can tell you my hospital, for the next available appointment for a neurologist is at least 4 months out. And if you're having, neurological issues, you don't want to wait 4 months.
Right.
But that's the reality of the situation. And this is in Southeast Michigan. That lets you know how challenged it is in an area of significant population. Take that to, underserved communities, not just domestically, but abroad, internationally. That is going to only exacerbate the issue. To get back to the original question, though, and topic of mental health, I think Dr. Wallace and Felicia are absolutely right. The first step is just talking about it and socializing it. For far too long, it's been considered taboo. And for far too long, there's been a stigma associated with mental health deficiencies that gives people pause from addressing it. And so until you start talking about it, you're going to end up with that window towards suffering and silence slowly opening larger and larger. And when you get to the point of suffering and silence and not addressing mental health issues, it's going to have an impact on your physical health, and worst case scenario, your ability to, obtain financial well-being. The American Psychiatry Association suggests that people with unresolved depression experience a 35% reduction in productivity. So if you can't talk about it amongst yourselves and amongst your friends and family, you're for sure not going to be able to talk to your boss about it. So your boss is going to look at you and say, well, Brian, you're 35% less productive than John. John's going to be the one that is teed up for the next promotion. Or God forbid, in these times of financial or rather economic performance across industries, Brian might get cut.
Right.
And that's just the reality of it. So, it does start with talking about it, because not talking about it does you no good.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from that perspective, the way you just laid it out. So if you look at, what we have going on in the world today, and we're looking at, the people going out shooting people, and and all these wars and fights, and and people are just snapping. Would you say that we've gone through COVID? I can't necessarily say, they've had COVID as long COVID. I can't say that, they had mental health issues that they didn't address and it just got worse. But what would your conversation be to someone at that point? Maybe because you don't know. But I just so often hear, well, they had mental health issues. Okay, didn't someone around them know that something was off or something was missing? How could you tell, or how could you work with someone like that, or what would the next steps be?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is I don't think we're through COVID yet. We might be done with COVID, but COVID's not done with us.
Right.
So let's just acknowledge that. But to the question around, how do these issues always end up being covered up with the blanket of, oh, they had a mental health episode? Mm-hmm. To me, I think it points to the lack of resources, like we talked about before. Locally here, in Oxford, Michigan, I'd say maybe 15, 20 miles north of where I live, last year there was a school shooting. And within, I think, the week of the shooting, the kid, the adult now, that is in prison and on trial for the mass shooting, had been brought to the principal's office and given detention for, I think they found drawings in his school book or something like that were very suggestive and clearly illustrated what he, carried out days after. If an institution like a public school district sees these drawings or sees this kid, because I guarantee you this wasn't his first episode and his first trip to the principal's office, because they found that out after the fact. They were able to go postmortem and see, all the various episodes in which there were intervention opportunities. The system failed. And that just points to me, in my opinion, good, bad, or otherwise, to the lack of resources available. And it's not just to schools. I don't want to point at our educators as they need to be the stopgap, because they shouldn't.
No.
Like we talked about before, it's a village, and we've lost that. How we get it back, I'm not sure, but you got to start somewhere. So if you started with the school systems, you got to bring in more social workers. You got to bring in additional resources on the police front. And if you got school resource officers, that's great. But if you look at the police departments, they also need additional support, not just to respond to instances with a weapon. You got to try and de-escalate. You got to try and intervene to the point where a kid doesn't show up with a gun at school. And unfortunately, I don't think that we've got the resources available across the board in order to do that right now because we've invested in other areas.
But and listening to what you just said, and you named all those people, but sometimes I sit here and think about, where's the parents in this?
Absolutely.
Where's
Absolutely.
the
And
parents?
in this instance that I'm referencing, his parents are on trial too.
Right.
Yeah, so it does start at home. And my wife and I go through this every day. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old daughter. And we're doing everything that we can to bring our daughters up in the way that we think is the most appropriate. To the extent that when we had our first daughter, when we were living in Washington, D.C., I had some family out there, but my parents were in Michigan and they were both retired. My mother-in-law lives in Michigan and she's retired. So it was a very easy decision, ignoring the economic aspect of how expensive it is to live in DC with children compared to the experience we have in Michigan. Ignoring all that, it was easy for us to say, let's move back home to raise our kids around family. That's how I was raised. That's how my wife was raised. And keeping all things in perspective, thank God we did do so at the end of 2018, because we know what happened a year and a half later. We needed that help. We needed that village of our parents and the rest of our family to help us raise our kids while we still maintained our professional careers. I don't know if we would have been able to do that and replicate that in DC. So
okay.
It does start at home. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Right. Dr. Sonia, I also think this is something that Tara and I actually just had a conversation about in my class just on last Monday, which is that as a community, we have to recognize that education is needed and we have to be receptive to education. So Tara and I, we do a lot of work around suicidality and prevention, education. And oftentimes the barriers that we find is that institutions feel as though they have enough education and they don't need any more. Or they have a plan and a system, and that system is going to work for whatever it is. So one of the barriers that we find is that when we're trying to access youth and families, we are blocked because groups or larger organizations or institutions feel as though there's no one else better to provide that information. So collaboration doesn't happen. We work a lot at just trying to get information in people's hands. So for example, we had a student who died by suicide. Later, the parents agreed it was death by suicide, but playing Russian roulette with a gun. And you and I both know that that's in all hands written, that's suicide. And I put together some information Tara and I had collected, put it together in a newsletter format, because there was never any information that came out to the parents about how to communicate with their kids about gun violence or suicidal thinking or ideation, any of it. We put it together, put our names on it, delivered it to the school publications, only for them to take the information that we put together, slap their name on it, and then ship it out. So the barriers of collaboration and people feeling like they need to have credit for something is huge in the world of mental health. I think that if we are going to educate, we educate at every level, and we can't just start talking about suicidality and mental health as a whole. We can't wait until they're in high school to talk about mental health. Mental health and mental wellness starts the moment they enter school. And we need to talk about what mental wellness looks like. We have to go beyond your safe person at school and talk about how to have healthy relationships and healthy boundaries with peers. I will never forget having a third grader come to me in session talking about her third grade friend talking about they didn't want to live anymore. I will never forget caring for a family after their 11-year-old died by suicide, accidental or not. There was something that happened, and that child died in their home. I will never forget those two situations, because those are one moment, just one of them is the definer that says we were too late to wait until middle school to talk about this, or we were too late to talk about high school. We also can't just talk to the children, but we have to include the parental unit. So one of the schools that I work with out here, they have a family night for mental health, where we go in and we have individual sessions. They're 30-minute sessions. It's kind of a round robin. The kids go with their parents to these sessions so that the kids can ask questions, the parents can ask questions, and mental health support is there to provide questions and answers and research. We have got to be an all-encompassing system that understands that we all play a role in the lives of one another.
Mm. That's good information. That is good. Tara, did you have anything to add?
Felicia's on point. This is something that a lot of parents are not realistic about and feel like it's too soon. I don't think there's any such thing as too soon. The conversations that we have, I deal with younger. My youngest clients were 3 having this conversation. So there's no such thing as too soon.
Mm.
As soon as the child is able to talk and
Mm-hmm.
you are able to understand them and they were able to understand you, is when you need to start having the conversation. And a lot of parents are not willing to have those conversations. And I tell them, if you need me, it's soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you need me in your life is when we need to start having the conversation, not when your child is being admitted to the crisis hospital or something along those lines. As soon as we're able to have a conversation is when we need to start having that conversation. Mm-hmm. So I wholeheartedly agree with what Felicia said. And it breaks my heart that we're struggling to get resources to individuals simply because there's a territorial situation going on when we're just trying to save lives, and it can't be that way. I mean, I think it's timely that this is all about civility, that civility underlies everything that we're doing here, because that's what is necessary. We are going into whatever environment that we go into with that tone to say, hey, we're here to help. And that's how we approach any school or organization when we do it, to say we're mental health providers and we want to help whatever situation you have going on. That's how we always approach it. Mm-hmm. So when I was asked to find someone, I immediately thought of her because I know that she would bring that spirit, because that's all that we do when we approach someone. Mm. Go in with that mindset of, we are here to help. What can we do to help you? How can we help? So I knew that was perfect.
Yes. So were you going to say something?
Yeah. Just selfishly, if I can add, the points that Wallace and Felicia are bringing up really do ring personal to me. Like I said, I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. When you got a baby that can't talk, crying is going to tell you, a couple of different things. Not very many things, but a couple of different things. Something hurts. I'm hungry. I have to use the bathroom. I'm tired. It's going to be very limited. But crying is a way for the baby to communicate. Once they start talking, and this is something we work on every day, emotional intelligence in young kids oftentimes channels into crying and outbursts. And that's something that we're working on with our 4-year-old all the time. So if I take my panel hat off and just say, as an aside, Dr. Wallace and Felicia, any resources that you guys have that you can send my way, I will welcome them with open arms, because it's not easy. And I can tell you as a parent, it's, yes, of course I'm going to work on it. Yes, I absolutely am dedicated 100%. My wife is too. My family is as well, to making sure that we can, trim the outbursts down and channel that into better communication so we can understand what the issue is and fix it. or at least talk it out. So that you don't end up in a situation where the only way that a kid can express themselves is by acting out. Thank God right now it's just tantrums for us.
Right.
Yes.
And they're age appropriate tantrums.
They're age appropriate tantrums.
Let's clear. They're age appropriate.
Yes.
You know, but I think, Brian, the other part of it is because you guys are having this communication already. I think for me, it's about helping parents to understand that if a child is old enough to ask, they're old enough to receive an age appropriate response. We have to quit shutting kids down when they're talking, when they're asking questions. We have to feed them information. So if we want them to be healthy communicators, we have to lead by example and communicate effectively with them.
Okay, Brian. I'm glad you asked the question. I can go back and share the answer now.
I'm taking notes. I promise.
Okay, so back to Brian's comment when he says, COVID's not through with us yet. So here's my question. With a decrease in COVID complications and increase in the RSV in children, what should we do globally to stay in good health?
So if I can start, I'll say this. Unfortunately, RSV, the common cold, seasonal allergies, and COVID all can look the same. And it's not just kids that we should be worried about.
Right.
It's the elderly and those that have compromised immune systems who will be at the highest levels of risk. And we're seeing it in our hospitals here locally. So I'm sure internationally, they're experiencing it as well. I can remember about a month ago, maybe a month and a half, I shared an article I saw on CNN with my finance director because we were trying to forecast out our volumes for the next 18 months and whether or not we were going to have an actual flu season. And the article was talking about back at the beginning of October or mid-September, how even at that point in Washington, D.C., there were no pediatric ICU beds available. And I saw that and I said, this is coming our way. And it was all attributed to RSV. So to think that the nation's capital and its metropolitan area didn't have enough ICU beds to treat kids with COVID is a frightening idea. But there's things that we can do to prevent it. Thankfully, researchers are working on a vaccine. And I know there are certain populations that are eligible. And of course, we should encourage them to seek that out and discuss it with their physician to make sure it's appropriate for them first. And then they can make the decision if they want to take the vaccine or not. But then there's preventative maintenance as well. Hygiene is incredibly important for all of these issues, whether that's hand hygiene, coughing into your arm pocket if you're talking to a kid, but generally just coughing into your elbow. Cleaning down surfaces is incredibly important as well. Those items that exchange hands quite often, phones, remote controls, keyboards. Making sure you've got good sanitizing principles and practices is going to be incredibly important because RSV oftentimes is transferred via surfaces. So it's not just about keeping social distance, because that does help as well. Masking, we've shown that it works, regardless of what people say. Even if you are what I like to call a noser and you keep your nose out, it still helps if you at least cover some of your, those entryways and exit pathways. So there's basic stuff that you can do to prevent RSV from spreading, but it's important that you do it so you don't stress the healthcare system, because God forbid you find yourself in a situation in which, oh my gosh, I need to go to the ED because my kid needs, treatment, and I don't know what is wrong with them. Personally, I'll bring up myself as an example. Last week was the first week we hadn't taken our daughters to the doctor for some sort of respiratory issue. And thankfully, it was never COVID. It was never flu. They've just got allergies. But for a string of like 6 or 7 weeks, we were going every single week. Thankfully, I know how to navigate it. I know how to navigate the healthcare system because I work in it. Everybody knows that. And so unfortunately, you're going to end up with parents and individuals that catch these viruses themselves that are only going to access when it's a problem. But there's things that you can do to prevent it from becoming a problem. So.
Okay, so basically you're saying we need to take the time right now before they get sick to get caught up on what we should be doing for them in order to prevent it.
Absolutely.
So just a quick question. So with COVID, and let's say long COVID, for instance, how are people dealing with that? I mean, do you get involved into that?
Personally, no, I don't.
Okay.
I'm not clinical, so I don't. But, I do think that there are colleagues that I've worked with that are still dealing with it from, a debilitating perspective. And professionally, you just got to be nimble. And so, we've taken the approach to, make sure that people can work where they are. You don't have to come into the hospital if you don't need to, because you might not be in a profession that requires you to physically be present.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good on multiple different points, right? One, if you're dealing with long COVID but still want to continue to work, you can work on your own time. You can work from the comfort of your home and take breaks when you need to. Additionally, you're not putting yourself in a position to make somebody else sick if you're still symptomatic and contagious, or if you're dealing with long COVID. That suggests to me that you've got a compromised immune system, so you're not putting yourself in a position to get sick or worse. So, meeting people where they are and providing the resources is incredibly important, but that's just a start, really. I think we've got to change our frame of reference to how you can be successful in accomplishing those ADLs, back to what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, because long COVID will impact that. So, to the extent that you can provide support to friends, family members, and colleagues where it's needed, you should. Because, thankfully, I'm in a position where I can extend myself to help others out, but I know others aren't. So you just got to, like we've talked about, be a village to those around you.
Okay, I'm going to be calling you. I got a question for you. I need some help. So, as we talk about all these health issues and mental issues and sicknesses and illnesses, it's causing other people to have to care for those people to help them out. So I'm going to call them caregivers. What do you say to them? Because they at the same time need to be taking care of themselves so they don't get in that same situation. In some cases, they're going to wear themselves out. I mean, so what is your conversation? What would your conversation be to them?
So personally, I am the spokesperson for boundaries and personal wellness. I tell everyone, just about everywhere I go, there are always going to be people and organizations that desire and or need you. There is nothing that you can do for any of them if you do not prioritize self and family. So even when I get out my planner to think about what am I going to do, who am I going to do it with, I cannot do any of the other things until I first write in my me time. So I'm a me time girl. So I schedule myself on my calendar. So that has to do with my gym time. There are mornings I get up and I prepare dinner before my long day because I don't want to work all day and then get off and I'm exhausted and got to try and prepare a meal and then go see mom and call dad. I'm all about how do we make this work? So scheduling in the times that are designed for you and keeping those as appointments for self. Taking care of my family needs. I have a daughter that I pick up from work every day. Organizing and getting other people to help pick her up if I'm going to be ripping and running that day as well. So for example, on Friday, it was my one day that I didn't have to get up early. And I asked one of my daughters, my youngest daughter, I was like, hey, can you take your sister to work for me? And she was like, yeah, mom, no problem. Normally it's, all the little but that day she was like, sure, mom. And I took her up on it, The other part of it is asking people for help, remembering that you're not the only person who can get this done. So when I am interacting with anyone, so no matter what level of caregiver you are, It is so crucial that you understand what your individual boundaries are. Yes, I'm willing to do this. No, I'm not willing to do that. And being okay with just saying no,
No.
not having to explain it, not having to come up with a lie or an excuse. Normally it's a lie. Don't even put yourself in that situation. Just be confident in your no. I can't do that. I'm not available. I have an auntie calling me right now. Are you back in town yet? I just left the phone down like I ain't never seen it because I don't want to have to lie. Or I'm honest and I'm like, girl, I live 20 minutes outside of the city limits. I ain't coming back to town today. Setting those boundaries because y'all know people will wear you out, right?
And you're right. You're right.
You know that they
Absolutely.
will drag you. They
Give an
want
inch,
your
they'll take a
every
mile.
waking moment. Boundaries are crucial. And if you don't set them up for yourself, no one is going to help you incorporate them.
So Felicia was my clinical supervisor, and she is my mentor when it comes to self-care. So she will check me because I never check myself. So she is the queen of making sure that I engage in self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So when I don't, and I rarely do, she is the first person that will send me a message and I will ignore it for a couple of hours. And then when I respond to her, I feel guilty and I will do something. I'll be honest with her. I will never lie to her and say, no, I'm not. Or yes, oh, of course I'm doing it. I will be honest with her because I can never lie to her because she will know.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason I know she will know, and then I will do whatever I need to do. But yes, I admire the fact that she schedules her self-care in her calendar and will never set it aside. She will be pleased to know that I canceled intentionally two things that showed up as invitations for me today and did complete self-care today. This is the only thing that was scheduled on my calendar. This event was the only thing scheduled on my calendar. And when this is over, I have nothing else scheduled on my calendar because I will go back into self care for the rest of the day. So,
Yes.
yes, I know. But I wholeheartedly agree that if we don't, it can get really, really bad. And I need to practice what I preach because during the pandemic, I told my clients, I encouraged them to engage in self care because I knew that they were feeling anxious. And I would encourage them to get up in the morning, get yourself dressed, do something for yourself, but I wasn't doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Physician, heal thyself. I wasn't. And I could eventually, it took 2 months, but I started to feel that in my body that I wasn't doing that.
Mhm.
My self-care, because I'm community based, is to listen to music in between sessions. And because I was doing it by video and I was stacking my clients, I would go from client to client to client to client to client 8 hours a day. I wasn't listening to music. And it took 2 months for me to realize that I was feeling anxious because I had no music in between sessions.
Mm.
And I could feel something was wrong in my body, but it never occurred to me that I wasn't getting up, walking around, or anything except to go to the bathroom and come back,
Mhm.
or to go to lunch and come back. And my husband was like, "You're not listening to music or anything back there, are you?" I'm like, "Why would I listen to music? I'm with my clients. What are you talking about? That is stupid." No, it's not. Music is your thing. Music is how you purge from the weight of what you're taking on from your clients. It's not
Mhm.
stupid. It's your self care and you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to schedule time to get up and go walk around the block or something and listen to music so that it wouldn't be so heavy doing what I was doing. So he knew something was missing. So, yeah, self care is absolutely necessary when you're caring for others. Figure out what your thing is. What is your thing? What is that thing that keeps you, that gets you light, that helps you let go of things. Is it running? Is it swimming? Is it biking? Is it getting on the swing? Is it playing with your kids? Is it walking your dog? Is it cooking, sewing, baking, something, blowing bubbles, chewing gum, something? What is your thing? Do something for yourself that gets your body feeling good. What is that thing for you? Because caring for others gets you, it starts to weigh on you, and
It
then
will
you
wipe
start
you
feeling
out.
resentful. Yes, and you start feeling resentful, and then you start feeling whatever towards the person that you're caring for, and they feel that it affects your health and it affects their health. You wonder why, for some reason, they start feeling not good, not sick, just not good,
Mm-hmm.
because you start to rub off on them and their health starts to stagnate for some reason.
Okay, got it.
And also make sure that that thing that's for you is not something that has a negative impact on you or somebody else, like a mask, like it's
Absolutely.
alcohol
Absolutely.
or substance abuse or anything like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Those
Absolutely.
are outlets, but should not be abused. I think
Absolutely.
the examples that you provided are much more healthy options,
Yeah.
more productive
I'm
options.
like, Brian's like, let me make this perfectly clear.
Look now.
I think she's telling me I
Absolutely.
need to get up out the bed in the morning and do
All
something.
in moderation.
Ooh, this is good. I'm learning a lot. So, okay, I'm going to ask you this. What action does your team plan to take to bring about global awareness of this issue? Of all the things that we talked about.
So we've got some plans. We are planning to have, I have my list here. We've got a strategy.
Okay, and your strategy is going to heal the world.
Absolutely. So we are planning to have a summit. We're going to have several summits, actually. One of the things that we plan to do is to focus on identifying 7 dimensions of health and wellness that are focused on gathering case studies from several different countries around the world. And those summits are going to identify what is needed to optimize health globally, health and wellness globally, because of course, we are not the only country focused on health and wellness. We're not the only continent focused on health and wellness. We're not the only country that experienced COVID. And we are going to partner with the rest of the ambassadors. And hopefully, we are going to develop a directory to share that information. And did we set 2023 for completing that? Or did we think that we were going to go into 2024?
I think you were starting in 2023. You may finish in 2024.
I think so. I think so. We're going to partner with the iChange Nation ambassadors to get some insight and develop summits. I think we said 4 summits to focus on health and wellness. Yes.
Okay. And then finally, just to help people out, what small steps, and you've already talked about this, what small steps can be taken to create a self-care and well-being plan of action? And we've already talked about it, so just give us a few that people can walk away from today. with some ideas as to what they're going to do. Me, I'm not going to stay in the bed so much in the morning.
So Brian, what did you kick us off with?
Yeah, we talked about a couple of different aspects of health across well-being, wellness, and just general health. And to summarize it all, I think what's important is to take inventory of all that, learning how to reflect on where your baseline is across those elements. And it might not be something you can do on your own. You might need to talk about it. And I think that's the first step, is talking about it, learning how to talk about it with your significant other, a close friend or colleague, if you need some help trying to itemize and inventory it. But I think getting that baseline so that way you can understand what your equilibrium is incredibly important. And being honest with the fact that very rarely are you going to be at equilibrium. And that might not be something that you control independently, because of the fact that there are so many known external pressures, so many things that are outside of your control. Nobody had COVID in their playbook. Nobody expected that. Mm-hmm. But you can do certain things to make sure, like Felicia said, you have some resiliency and you can bounce back from whatever is coming your way. But knowing that you can't do it on your own is, I think, in my opinion, the first step towards success.
Yes. Anyone have anything else to add to?
I was gonna say, I think my one tip I would give is expand your circle. I agree with Brian. I've said it over and over again. We definitely need one another. Make it a point on purpose, intentionally, to spend time with someone else. So Tara will tell you I'm the queen of socials. So I've probably had a date with one person at least every week for the last 12 weeks. I am adamant about connection. My kids are older, so I don't have little ones, Brian. But my kids are 18 and 20. I have a lot of time. My wife works a different shift, so she works later in the day. And I intentionally pick people who do not have large social circles. They're not on anyone's radar. They are people who are usually spending a lot of alone time just for the sole purpose of encouraging others that they're seen and they're valued. So how does that balance back to me? It helps me to remember that in the presence of others, I'm seen and I'm valued.
That's good. Tara, anything?
I think this has been an amazing experience for all of us. And I hope that something was shared that gives somebody at least something to focus on in the coming week. Definitely.
Well, I thank you for your time today. This has been a wonderful session. I've learned a lot. Good. I really have. And I can't wait to see, what you guys have coming up next, because this to me has been very insightful, and it should be insightful to a lot of people that's been watching, because we've been seeing all these things going on. And then sometimes we just don't know how to deal with it. We don't know what to say. We sort of sit back and look and we just watch things go forward. And if something happened, then we're sitting here saying, I should have said something. I should have recommended something. I should have done something. So at least now, listening to you, we have a start. So I thank you for that. But I'm not going to keep you all day, because right now it's about 5:20. So I've had you too long. So I'm going to let you go. Again, I say thank you. Wait for me backstage to just have a quick, something to say to you. And again, thank you. And I can't wait for the next steps.
Thank you.